The train waits at the platform of Seoul Station. Its destination, Busan. Just before departure, a man, writhing in pain, stumbles inside. He carries a deadly virus, one that will soon turn the whole train into a moving nightmare. This is how Yeon Sang-ho's most famous film, Train to Busan, begins. A blockbuster that brought him international recognition as a master of genre cinema. But few people may know that before zombies and melodramas, Yeon was an animation director. And not just any. He wrote, drew, and even voiced his own stories that were grotesque, violent, and disturbingly raw films, dissecting the social reality of South Korean in the early 2000s. Korean animation, or Ani, as they are sometimes called to avoid confusion with anime, had always been niche, mostly aimed at children rather than adults. That's why the foul dialogues, crude drawings, and nauseous amount of violence in Yeon's films not only shocked, but disturbed the audience. It doesn't surprise then that it didn't receive much attention at first. But it changed one night, when, convinced he had no talent and nothing to lose, Yeon uploaded a short called The Hell to YouTube. Unexpectedly it gained recognition, and one of the festivals in Japan even invited it to its program. Seen not as just animation, but as a biting social commentary, it stood out. And that moment set everything in motion. Years later, Yeon's first feature-length animation, The King of Pigs, premiered at Cannes, being the very first Korean animation ever screened there. So, what exactly do Yeon's animations reveal, and why do they still such a strong reaction? Well, let's dive into this. I call this his social commentary animations. Yeon made them independently on low budgets before moving on to live action. Each one throws us into the lives of characters trapped in survival mode, not just pessimistic, not just unlucky, but forced to fight every day, every hour just to stay alive. The Hell, Two Kinds of Life is split into two parts, two people and two outcomes. A Grim Reaper, or what the English translation calls an angel, visits our protagonists to announce to them that they're going to die. The man has no time. He dies today and is sent to the 4th level of hell, condemned to suffer 10 times worse than he ever did in life. The woman has 5 days, and her destination is heaven. Not that bad, but those few days when she's anticipating her death drives her insane. Eventually, both of them try to run, convinced that they can outsmart Grim Reapers or angels or any other unearthly creatures. And well, they can't. While the first part leans into gore, made even more striking through rotoscopic animation, the second part digs into psychology, showing how the mind collapses when faced with certain death. But in both, the same truth comes true. No matter how miserable, how poor, how cursed their lives are, they still want to live, and they'll do anything to survive. And that, in many ways, is Yeon Sang-ho's core theme. Beneath the grotesque, the vulgar, the violent, his stories are about people clinging to life. Society, in contrast, is the hell they need to conquer. That's even more direct in his second short, Love is Protein. It's almost impossible to describe. 3 struggling writers, broke and starving, scrape together the last money to order fried chicken. What follows is absurd, disturbing, and unforgettable. Without spoiling too much, everyone in this story, the hungry writers, the restaurant owner, the delivery man, and even the fried chicken himself, is trapped in the same brutal logic. Eat or be eaten, sell or starve. To survive, someone else has to suffer, or you'll be the one suffering instead. That's the paradox Yeon keeps coming back to. In his words, morality collapses under the weight of survival, and survival itself becomes the system that exposes how cruel society really is. And sometimes it presents itself as grotesque consumption where even the most basic bonds collapse under necessity. And that brings us to The King of Pigs, a brutal, youth-centered story where the rule is simple: kill or be killed.
놀고 먹어도 잘 먹고 잘 사는 그 놈들은 애완견 같은 놈들이야. 개 같은 놈들이라고. 그 놈들 먹이가 되는 우리는 돼지들이고. 우리는 죽어서 팔다리가 찢겨나가야 가치가 생긴단 말이야. 경민아, 돼지가 그 정도 가치밖에 없는 동물이냐? 경민아, 너도 그렇게 생각하는 거야? 어?
The King of Pigs tells the story of two childhood friends who reunite years later and recall their time in middle school. But those weren't days of innocence. They were marked by bullying, fighting, and the constant presence of cruelty. They weren't built to fight, nor able to defend themselves, until Kim Chol, a quiet boy in their class, stepped in to help. Here, Yeon's message is bleak but consistent. Society, in Korea or anywhere, is a place where cruelty thrives, and where survival often becomes the only law. Taken together, Yeon's works remind us that survival isn't just biological, it's social, it's economical, it's political, and that's why they hit so hard.
이 칼이란 건 말이야. 이 짐승과 인간을 구별해 주는 거야. 내 몸에 달린 것도 아니면서 나한테 힘을 주는 거지. 그래서 이건 절대 놓치면 안 돼. 근데 사람들이 칼을 만들었을 때 생각지도 못한 것이 만들어졌어. 그건 바로 악이다.
And isn't that the paradox again? We like to think cruelty belongs to animal, yet Yeon's films are filled with chickens who are scaredy, pigs who take part in student fights, dogs who attack. In his vision, the so-called human world is no less brutal than the slaughterhouse. There's the thread running through all of Yeon Sang-ho's work, from the Hell to Love is Protein to the King of Pigs, and it doesn't stop there. His next project, the animated feature Seoul Station, reimagines the same theme through the zombie apocalypse, and directly sets the stage for his breakout hit Train to Busan. Because even there, in his most commercial film, the zombies aren't the real monsters. The people are. Those who choose cruelty, those who turn survival into betrayal. Yeon doesn't show us cruelty. He shows us what happens when survival exposes the truth, that society is built on competition, sacrifice, and violence. That's why his films are so disturbing, because they feel less like fiction and more like recognition.